The massacre at St. Andrew Hospital. The broadcast resumes without delay, and Diane does not ease back into the conversation this time. Her tone sharper as she demands Paul explain exactly what this man did to Alice. Paul doesn't hesitate anymore, his fear replaced by certainty as he admits Alice was not driven by impulse or madness. She was trained. Diane presses him, asking what that means, and Paul answers plainly, saying Alice was taught how to kill long before the hospital. He describes how she spoke about repetition, about doing the same action until it became automatic, until hesitation was gone. Diane connects it immediately to the wounds, the neck, the heart. Paul nods. He made it efficient. The words land harder now because there is no ambiguity left. Diane asks if Alice ever told him who this man really was, not just what he did. Paul exhales slowly. She didn't know his real name. A pause. She called him her father. Silence settles over the studio, but it no longer feels uncertain. It feels dangerous. Diane asks if this father is the same man connected to the disappearance of Caroline Thomas. Paul nods once. He took her. The weight of that settles instantly, shifting the story from theory to fact. Diane asks, what happened after that? Her voice tighter now, more urgent. Paul answers without hesitation. He raised her. A pause. To replace what he lost. Diane presses harder, asking what he lost, but Paul shakes his head. He doesn't know, only that Alice described it like something broken, something that needed to be rebuilt. Diane's expression tightens as the implication becomes clear. This wasn't random. Paul shakes his head. No. A pause. It was preparation. The word lands with finality, and Diane doesn't argue it this time. She asks the question directly now. No hesitation, no softness left. How many times had Alice done this before the hospital? Paul looks at her. More than once. Silence. Commercial break. The cut comes fast and loud, breaking the tension with a sharp shift in tone. A pharmaceutical ad, a calm voice describing control, balance, and stability. Clean images of smiling people, everything measured and safe. Precision you can trust. The screen lingers on a close-up of a steady hand, then cuts away. The broadcast returns immediately, but Diane is already leaning forward, no longer composed, no longer distant. She asks Paul if there are other victims, other places, pushing for anything that can confirm what he's saying. Paul doesn't hesitate. Yes. Diane freezes for a moment, then asks where. Paul shakes his head. I don't know. A pause, but he does. The weight shifts again, no longer about Alice alone. Diane asks if this man is still active, still capable of doing this again. Paul answers without hesitation. He never stopped. Silence drops hard across the studio. Diane, do you know his name? Paul, architect. To the world, maybe, but to her, she only ever called him father. Diane, Caroline Thomas. She vanished 20 years ago. You're saying he took her, that he raised her for this? Paul, he didn't just take her, he molded her to replace what he had lost. A daughter made of glass and steel. Diane, and the hospital. If that was her training, what was she being prepared for? What was the final goal? Paul, the hospital wasn't the goal. Diane, it was just a demonstration, a way to show the world his masterpiece was ready. Diane, one last question. Paul, how many times had Alice done this before? Before the hospital? Paul, more than once. God, help us, much more than once. Diane doesn't sit back down as the weight of everything settles, her voice lower now, as she asks the question that should have been asked from the beginning. If Paul knew this much, why didn't he tell the police? The room stills as Paul looks at her, and for the first time, there is no hesitation in his fear. I tried, he says quietly. A pause. But he was there in the hospital. The words land heavily as Diane leans forward, asking what he means. Paul explains that it wasn't after, it wasn't later, it was inside the hospital, during the chaos, when alarms were still going off, and people were still screaming. His breathing shifts as he relives it. Alice told me to leave. A pause. She knew he was there. Silence tightens around the room. Diane asks if he saw him. Paul nods once, slowly. Yes, he continues, describing the moment, turning a corner near the ICU, and seeing a man standing still while everything else was falling apart. No panic, no urgency, just watching. He didn't move. A pause. He didn't need to. Diane doesn't interrupt. Paul swallows. He looked at me like he already knew everything. A pause, like I didn't matter. The room feels smaller now. Diane asks what he said, her voice controlled but quieter. Paul exhales slowly, forcing the words out. Alice spared you. A pause. But I won't. The threat lands hard. Paul's eyes shift slightly, not away, but inward, replaying the moment. His voice drops. I still remember his eyes. A pause. They were like dark pools, no pupils. Silence. Diane doesn't move. He didn't seem human. The words hang there, not exaggerated, not dramatic, just stated as fact. Paul continues, quieter now. He told me he was always around. A pause. In the darkest corner of a room, on a dark street, Diane remains still, watching. Silence stretches. He said, if I spoke, he would know. A pause. And he would come for me. The weight of that fills the room as Diane turns sharply toward the control room. A staff member moves into view briefly, speaking off camera, confirming the police have been notified and are on their way. Diane turns back immediately. Paul, the police are coming here now. Paul nods once. They should. A pause, but they're not the only ones. Silence drops hard. Diane freezes. What do you mean? Paul doesn't answer right away. Then he's watching this. The words settle fully. Diane looks toward the cameras, the lights, the space beyond them, seeing the room differently now. Paul leans forward slightly, his voice low. He knows where I am. A pause, and who I'm with. The tension becomes immediate. Somewhere outside the studio, sirens begin to rise faintly in the distance. Paul's expression changes, not fear recognition. His eyes fix on something just past the cameras. Then he says it. Thomas. Silence. The red live light continues to blink.